if you look back at the original study, it's often referred to as the Dutch study. If you look back at the original study, they were screening out patients who had mental health concerns because the goal of that treatment was, yes, to treat some dysphoria, but there's not evidence that this treats major depressive disorder, borderline personality disorder, autism. That's not what this is evidence to treat, and yet the argument is that if we can medicalize somebody, then all of their other mental health issues will somehow be alleviated.
And the reason you mentioned that, sorry, Francis,
no,
just to clarify this, is that a lot of the new cases that you saw over and above what you expected, these were very different profile. They were not boys, they were young girls who were presenting with eating disorders, autism-like symptoms, etc., right? That's
Absolutely.
why you bring it up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they are girls who oftentimes there is a disagreement. So they will claim that, oh, I felt like this my whole life. And their parents initially will often say they had no gender issues at all as a child, that they were absolutely normatively fine in their being a girl, and at onset at 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Yes, that's what I came to finally understand, that maybe out of our huge number of patients, there were a few patients that this model of care maybe helped, but it was getting to the point where we were harming more patients that we were helping, just by the numbers.
Wow.
And so why, at that point, when girls with autism, I think you quoted the number of 30% are presenting themselves, that 30% of autistic girls, when people with severe psychiatric illnesses are presenting themselves and are being putting through transition, including some of the awful cases that you've spoken about, why hasn't there been more people coming out and talking about this, or more people wanting to stop this?
So I do think those people, I think that there are more people like me. And I know that I've spoken to a number of them since I have come forward. But if you even look at what has happened to me in my own local press, those, basically the voice of reason, the voice of can we slow down, the voice of we need to actually look at who we're hurting, is being drowned out right now, and we're being shouted down and screamed out by this idea that the fact that I say anything is somehow is going to hurt and harm trans kids. I can't even count the number of articles, and all they do is vilify me. And they also vilify me in strange ways where I just wonder, a lot of America right now is liking to pretend like y'all in England don't exist, or that Sweden doesn't exist, or Finland doesn't exist, or none of the countries, like your country that's actually starting to have some kind of a dialogue around this. All the local media would like to think that America is in its own bubble, and we know what's right on this topic, and no one else exists.
But you're married to a trans man. How transphobic can you be?
I also had identified as genderqueer in the past, and I experienced a lot of...
You can tell just by looking at this chick. Come on, man. She's got her hair pulled back. She's got tattoos all over her body. She's woke as hell. And even she can't take the craziness because it's shoved in her face because she has to work at the place. These other woke women, they don't work at these places. It's not shoved in their face, the truth. They just keep being crazy.
A lot of gender dysphoria as a child myself. I'm not opposed to adult transitioning. I do still think that adults who are transitioning would benefit by support of a therapist and a therapeutic process, but I am not in any way opposed to trans people. I also have an undergrad in anthropology. I fully understand that there is a lot of diversity in gender and gender presentation. But what I am not in agreement with is this push to rapid medicalization of children. And also, the current model doesn't even make sense if you're actually pro diversity. Because if I am pro gender diversity, why are we telling little kids that if they play with a toy that is not in their gender category, that somehow that means that they're trans? Like, I thought it's 2023. Shouldn't we be telling our children, you can wear whatever you want, you can play with whatever toys you want, you can have whatever job you want? And instead we're in some like weird 1950s thing where if a boy plays with a Barbie, suddenly his parents think that he needs to go to a gender clinic and it means that they're trans.
Do you know the thing that I find quite unusual as well is that in a society like America, which is so litigious, where people sue others at the drop of a hat, you have the minimum of medical checks, fast tracking not only people but children, and some very young children at that, through to irreversible medical procedures. I mean, that's just a $1 million lawsuit waiting to happen, isn't it?
No, because unfortunately, the institutions that are supposed to. Okay, let me explain. So if you go and try to file that lawsuit in the United States today, the doctors and the hospitals are able to say that the American Academy of Pediatrics says that this is right, the Endocrine Society says this is right, and they can just claim that they're just following all of these medical guidelines. I did not believe that where I worked was following even these quote guidelines, but judges, I think thus far, have been taking that at that easy face value. I mean, you hear it in the news. Well, all of the American medical establishments agree with this kind of care, and it doesn't line up.
You talk in your article about a case where there was a girl who had a double mastectomy. She had her breast removed.
If you're talking about the patient who called a few months later and asked to have her breast put back on, she was not a minor, but she was young. She was 18 or 19 when we did the surgery.
So she has her breast removed. A few months later, she calls up and says, I'm a girl. I want my breasts back. I mean, a horrifying story in and of itself. And she's pregnant, so she's not going to be able to breastfeed her child. You're saying she can't sue the people who advised her and put her through that?
I am not a lawyer.
Successfully.
I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know.
Yeah.
There is potentially a case there, but I know that the way that the surgeons and the way that the center responded was that she made the choice.
Yeah.
And I think we see that with the detransitioners, and some of them are minors, and they will say, well, your parent made the choice. Your parent agreed.
And that's kind of the question here, isn't it? Because one of the most mind-boggling things about this idea, as you describe it, is, I am myself not a progressive. I'm also not, I'm somewhere in the middle. But I thought one of the most central elements of progressivism was this increased attention towards the idea of consent. People shouldn't do things, to other people without their consent. But I don't know about anyone, but it doesn't seem to me like a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old, frankly, even an 18-year-old from a very troubled background like this young woman, is really capable of consenting to those things with, a full, proper understanding of the impact.
But these kids want these things. So in these family dynamics and in these centers, these kids show up and they were demanding this from their parents yesterday. And their whole household has been in chaos because this kid has decided that the best thing for them right now is to start testosterone tomorrow. And
yeah, they tell the kids, you're going to die. You're going to commit suicide. All your problems, and this kid is just autistic. She just has depression or whatever, just normal whatever. And they tell them that they're going to kill themselves. It's going to get better, worse and worse and worse and worse. Even if you're not thinking about killing yourself, you will. So you better hurry up and get this hormones and this whatever, and then you'll be normal. You won't have that. You just have these mental problems because you're not normal. You need to be in a normal body and be straight.
I don't even know how you can. Okay, part of medical ethics and part of actual consenting has to be that you're not under any undue influence. So we think about that sometimes in really, bad medical case. Like if you were just told you have cancer and it's potentially, a very bad cancer, we don't want to tell you 10 minutes later, would you like to be in this research study for this drug? Because we're putting you in an undue influence. And sometimes we even say, maybe the person who's going to treat your cancer shouldn't be the person who asks you if you want to do this procedure. It should be somebody neutral. So so we think about these things in medical ethics. In medical ethics, those young people, I believe, are in a situation where they have undue influence. They are being influenced by a socially mediated cultural phenomenon. And the only way that they truly could give consent to that treatment is if they have been out of that phenomenon and out of that social pressure for long enough, i.e. potentially an adult, to then provide that real consent. Or we could just, shut off all social media and tell them they can't look at this stuff, and then ask them, if you have a 15-year-old girl who's in the middle of this belief, and we put her in the middle of Montana with no internet access on a horse farm, she potentially might not want testosterone 12 months down the line. But that's the level. They're under so much influence. It's from their school, it's from their peers, it's from the social media, and they want this right now.
That makes sense. But Jamie, on top of all of that, though, it's a kind of basic principle of our societies that children can't consent to anything, really. Right? You can't drink or take drugs or have sex. Lots of other much less significant things in terms of the impact on your life and the lives of other people around you.
You can't get a bad tattoo and be stuck with it. You have to be 18 to get bad tattoos.
So you can get a tattoo. You can't get a tattoo, but you can get hormones and potentially double mastectomy. Is that not? Is that just? I mean, sorry, but is that not insane?
It is to me now. It was not to me then.
I'm not having a go at you. I'm trying to flesh out the issue itself. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
No, I get it. I get it.
And keep in mind that it's not that they can consent to getting a mastectomy or getting hormones. They're consenting to being sterile for their entire existence. They're consenting to being sexually, dysfunctional, not being able to have sex or orgasm for their entire lives, and they're making this decision as a child.